Hello everybody, welcome back to Momo versus MTG. Today we'll be taking a look at another personal commander deck tech of mine, Ovika, Enigma Goliath. So for Is It and 5 mana, you get a legendary creature, Phyrexian Nightmare, with flying, ward 3, pay 3 life. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, create X 1/1 red Phyrexian Goblin creature tokens, where X is the mana value of that spell. They gain haste until end of turn. So this came out in Phyrexian LB1. Definitely a pretty neat commander. I think he's pretty cool in Is It colors. I will say Is It is probably one of my least popular color pairing in terms of like deck building, besides maybe Selesnya. Um, but yeah, I decided to give it a shot. Let me try one of these Is It commanders out, and this one stuck out to me. Originally, I had this deck as the River Song, which I plan to update and change around before I release a video on that, because this Is It commander also really reached out to me. Very unique in its abilities, and was a cool build around. So, um, but for this purposes and the game plan I wanted to go with, Vika's just seems better in that regard, so I might as well cater the deck towards this commander and the things it wants to do. So without further ado, let's jump right into this. Um, so yeah, general game plan. We want to be creating a lot of tokens, and our commander is the primary way of doing that. Um, yeah, it's gonna be a bit of a strange deck tech because it doesn't fit the standard mold I usually go by, where it has ramp, uh, and then all these different kind of categories. This one's a little more over the place, but and especially in terms of his mana base. So let's start there. Um, so basically, we don't run too much of the typical ramp. We have, an arcane signet, a soul ring, midnight clock. And in particular, midnight clock is very important because it allows you to draw a fresh grip of cards when the 12th hour strikes. So very good card. Also helps the ramp. And then we're running the cost reductors of spells. I think these three fit, just fine for our needs. I don't need too much more than that. So Primal Amulet for 4. And of course, again, this flips, makes your spells cost 1 less. It also copies the next spell if we use mana from it when it does flip. Excuse me. Sapphire Medallion for 2. And Ruling Medallion. I just want to make all our blue, red spells cheaper. This covers all our bases, especially our commander, because it is kind of expensive. So yeah, threw these in the deck. I will start by saying before I go further, like, I haven't really got to play test this deck in a pod yet, but this definitely seems on one of more stronger ends, just because of how fast it gets up online. It's running a lot of ritual effects. So keep that in mind. I'll get back to you once I, get this in paper format and, give it a test run. So going down the list here, we have our other category. Instead of ramp, really, I have the Furious Mana category, right? So these are all cards that are going to add a lot of mana in a ritual type style. So you get the mana immediately, usually a lot more of it, but it will go away. For instance, for 2 mana, you get to drop this and later on pay 2. So you're basically paying 2 ahead of time so that you can net 2 mana. A lot of these cards are going to do that in some way, right? So Vessel of Volatility, basically, once you do cast this later on, you can pay 2 and add 4 red mana. I put Display and Power in here, but it has multiple purposes. But usually you want to be copying your own stuff to gain more mana. Especially we have a lot of spells on a stack, we can copy a lot of them. So very strong card came out Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings was just a great set for the commander set. Turns out like nice cards to have in decks. So Display of Powers in here, can copy a ramp. Ironcrag Feet for 4 mana. We get to add 7 mana, right? You can only cast one more spell this turn, so we take advantage of this. Usually we just throw our commander out off this or something. Same with Geosurge, right? For 4 mana, add 7. I think it's 7. We only cast a spell, only mana to cast artifact or creature spell. So yeah, this usually is our commander. We have some artifacts and definitely some creatures we want to cast, but getting our commander as fast as possible turns the deck online really fast because it's the main game plan. It's a monolithic commander in terms of how to get from A to B. However, it's really neat the direction I think it takes. So, Desperate Ritual, all these ritual effects. Reverberation for 2 can copy it. Simeon Spirit Guide is a free red basically. We get the exile from our hand. And we usually are refilling our hand, so like this is perfectly okay. Mystic's Mastery I put in here as well, but basically we get to copy every instant or sorcery if we pay the overload, so it can be a ton of mana or a ton of other game actions, which you will see. Mana Geyser for 5, good commander staple, because usually you're getting a ton of mana. Let's say everyone has 5 tap lands, you're getting 15 mana for 5, so very, very powerful card. Pyretic Ritual, again, the cheaper ritual spells, even if it nets 1 mana, that really adds up. Seething Song, same deal, but nets 2 red mana. Reiterate, we can copy these spells again. And Mana Flare. For 3's enchantment, whenever any player taps a land for mana, it produces double. So really speeds up the game for everybody. But you try to take advantage of this first, of course, and see where it goes from there. Jessica's Will, right? Another commander staple. But usually had a ton of red mana for 3, especially if their hand is full. You could probably get like 7 mana half the time, so cool to see. And yeah, so that is the Furious Mana package, and I'll go into this little subcategory of Furious Mana. Like still, I say Furious Mana, it's just adding a ton of mana at the same time. So, battle him, add red in your mana pool for each creature you control, and if we have our commander out, we're slinging all these cheap spells. You're creating a ton of 1/1 red Phyrexian Goblin. Remember, creature typing is pretty important here, especially Goblin, because there's a lot of synergies with that. So, battle him, if we have 10 creatures out, we cast this, he creates 2 more. We're getting a ton of mana, right, off this, usually. But we need our engine to kind of be online, so that's why it doesn't initially ramp us, and that's a distinction I want to make with these. Same with Brightstone Ritual for red. Add a red for each goblin play, so super cheap. If we have, 5 or 6 goblins, for 1 mana, we're creating a ton of red mana. So yeah, that's why I threw these in deck, because their creature type are goblins. So really neat fits. Could really hit the ground running with this. And yeah, so then let's go over the main game plan. So like, why did I put this together? What was the goal I want to have in mind? And it basically all started with one of these creature cards here. This one right here, Deceiver Forms. So for 7 mana. And important here that you do need the colorless symbol here in order to cast this. It's technically a waste, so anything that has this mana symbol in it can produce that mana, and you need that mana symbol there in particular in order to even cast him. So, for instance, a Soul Ring does work, has these mana symbols. If yours looks different, just bear in mind it does, make that particular mana. We have some lands that do that as well, namely like Cavern of Souls, and some other ones like that. Terrain Generator. This should actually be maybe in the RAM package because it, rounds its head. But anyways, back to my original point. My apologies. Deceiver Form reads for 7. Beginning of your combat in your turn, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature card revealed this way, you may have creatures you control other than Deceiver Form become copies of that card until end of turn. You may put that card on the bottom of your library. So, very interesting card here. And that's why I originally went with the River Song. Because basically this effect here, skip your draw, is what I want to look for. Because the idea is, if with this on the battlefield, you may have a creature card up there that you really, really want. So we're now, if we have like 10 1/1 goblins, with this out, and a nice creature card on top to hit to have these goblins turn into for the turn, that is the idea of the deck. That's what I really wanted to pull off. And I thought River Song was the best suited for this, but it just didn't have enough going in the deck to really pull it off. It was a little all over the place because I also went with the chaos theme in the deck, and that's what I want to build River Song into, is a little more chaotic theme. Um, and let the Deceiver form kind of stuff, shenanigans happen in this deck. So that's the idea: is take all these little goblins with haste, turn them into a really totally rounded package of creatures that they can turn into for various effects. And let's go down that route. So furthermore, to advance that game plan, we have all these ways to tutor for a creature to be put on top of our library. And that is the important part, is we want to put the creature on top of the library and keep it there. So that's why River Song and Parallel Thoughts, let's take a look at this one, helps us do that. So when Parallel Thoughts comes into play, search your library for 7 cards, remove them from game, face down pile, shuffle that pile, and then shuffle your library. So if you would draw a card, you may instead put the top card of your pile uh, remove into your hand, right? So, other words, what this really means for us is we get the tutor for 7 cards if you want. They could be 7 good cards, they could be 7 bad cards, keep your opponents guessing. But then, anyways, you shuffle that pile and you can potentially draw what you want from it or something you don't. And if you draw a card, you may instead put the top card of that pile into your hand. And the important ruling on this card is you can still choose to try to draw from this pile of cards, even if there's no cards in it, which effectively allows us to skip draw steps. And River Song kind of skips your draw step because, for our sake, right, you draw cards from the bottom of your library rather than the top. So this is a way to keep the card we want on top, namely a really good creature, and then keep it there. So yeah, let's take a look at how we're going to put creatures up there. So first off, we have all these tutors that tutor for creatures, right? Which makes sense. But the kicker is, like Giant Arbiter, search for a giant, but it puts it on top of your library and you shuffle the rest. So all these are going to be grabbing a creature type and throwing it on top. We really don't care about too much. Just the tutors that at least tutor for creatures. So we can grab a giant, we can grab a dwarf. Look for any number of dwarf cards with Dwarven Recruiter. Just the cheapest one in general is Flamekin Harbinger. Put an elemental card right on top, right? It's very cool. Forerunner of the Empires, Dinosaur, go tutor for a dinosaur. Conduit of Ruin is dual purpose here. So we can search for a colorless spell when it comes in. And first creature spell costs 2 less, very nice as well. But the mana cost is 7 or greater. Usually Conduit of Ruin, we're either grabbing Deceiver form or It That Betrays. So some big Eldrazi colorless action. And Goblin Recruiter, right? Very nice in deck. We can go search for a goblin. So 6, I'm playing with this number, but I feel like 6 is pretty decent in terms of tutor. And I try to at least grab one or have 1 or 2 options in the creature type we can grab. For dwarves, right now, I'm still playing around with this, right? Even now. Right now, the 2 options I'm considering, which I think there's a funny line and then there's a correct line, right? So we either grab 7 dwarves, put that on top, and basically if we have like 20 goblins, they all can turn into 7 dwarves. So it's funny because there are more than 7 dwarves, and then 7 dwarves gets +1/+1 for each other creature named 7 dwarves you control. Your deck can have up to 7 cards named 7 dwarves. So really funny theme built into the card. And now we're going to create, 20 dwarves, let's say. So we're breaking that mold, which is pretty funny. And then, again, the correct play is to grab Stormkin the Artist, because we do kind of storm off. So whenever you cast or copy instant sorcery, you get a treasure token, right? And then it gets +1/+0 for each artifact we control. So, 1 spell off, 10 Stormkill Artists, you're creating 10 treasure tokens, and yeah, they're going to be really big and usually swinging for a game on their own. Especially, like I said, it's kind of a storming deck, but not in the typical sense where you storm off and win, but you storm off and generate enough value to potentially win, right? Yep, a tutor for drowsy. This is what I really want to pull off one game is I put it that betrays on top of the library, have all my creatures turn into them with Deceiver form, and then swing out with, let's say, 10 it that betrays all at different players, right? Because this will, if it doesn't end the game, it's going to put them in such a bad position where it should just end, right? So they're all going to have Annihilator 2 when they swing, and whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-token permanent, put that card onto the battlefield under your control. So way to really clear out the board state, so to speak. And then you gain advantage off that. In terms of elements, right? We just told you for elementals. Tectonic Giants is a pretty sweet one. Whenever tax becomes target of spell opponent controls, choose one. It deals 3 damage to each opponent. Or exile top 2 cards of the library. You can play them until your next turn. So you have options with this, which I really like. If you're swinging out with enough Tectonic Giants and dealing enough damage to each opponent, you can probably just, kill them. Win the game that way. And also Malignus, pretty cool, because power and toughness are equal to half the highest life total among your opponents rounded up, and damage that would be dealt by Malignus can't be prevented. So, not a surefire win, but I do like the clause like damage can't be prevented. So, allows us to get around fog effects, stuff like that, and they're usually be pretty big creatures. So, I like having options to grab here, depending on the game state where we're at. And then giants. When certain flinger attacks, you may sacrifice on the creature. When you do, it deals damage equal to that sacrificed creature's power to any target. If it was a giant, deals twice. So since we're, going to be turning all our creatures into this thing, yeah, it's going to be dealing double damage when we attack with our Certlin Flinger and swing with it. Swing out with them. Yep, can probably close games that way. And then Borderland Behemoth. Yeah, Borderland Behemoth gets +4/+4 for each other giant you control. So this scales extremely strongly. If you have 10 out, they're all getting, 9 times 4 worth of stats. And they have trample. So this will definitely probably end the game. So we have all these neat different ways of 2 to 4 to end games. For the goblin category, whenever attacks, flip 3 coins. So this is a funny one, right? Because if you attack with like 20 of these, right, you're reflipping 60 coins. For each flip you win, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token that's tapped and attacking. Cool. Neat bonus, but the flipping is funny. And then Goblin Trash Master is basically the 7 dwarves. Other goblins you control get +1/+1, and also can take out artifacts. So they all buff each other, yada yada. So good stuff here. And then I think the last category here is the dinosaurs. We can tutor for dinosaurs. It has trample, deals combat damage, it deals double to a player, right? So if we're getting through with this, we're ending games. Charging Tuscadon and Silverclad Ferocidons. And whenever it's dealt damage, each opponent sacrifices a permanent. So very powerful effect, and they either block this and, hopefully, maybe don't die to it, but then everyone's sacrificing at least a permanent or two, depending how many they block. And this affects everybody. So a way to take people out and also control the board state. So they all serve various purposes. And what really turns this into grab what you want kind of deal is the Maskwood Nexus effect, of course. Because creatures you control and every creature type, same is true for creature spells and creature cards you own that are on the battlefield. So with Maskwood Nexus out and then any tutor, we can grab any creature we want. So pretty neat. So yeah, it's kind of a toolboxy way of building this deck. I think it's pretty neat. And let's go into things that either enhance a deck or win cons on our own. I kind of want to take a look at the win con furthermore. So a card like Shared Animosity, if we can't pull off our combo of sorts, right? Shared Animosity might just win the game on its own as well. If we have a ton of hasty goblin swinging, because they'll get +1/+0 till in turn for each attack creature that shares a creature type with it. So these little goblins, we have 10 of them, they're going to get +10/+10, right? When swinging out with them, so can be strong on its own. And then Surge of Victory, right? For 6, you exile instant sorcery card from your graveyard. Creatures you control get +X/+0 until end of turn, or X is the mana value. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player this turn, copy the exiled card. I mean, you may cast a copy without paying its mana cost. So, you're buffing your entire team really strongly, and then getting a high value card out of your graveyard. Even if it's like a Jessica's Will, right? So you could do. Yeah, 10 creatures connect. You're casting 10 copies of Jessica's Will in whatever direction you want. So, can either win you the game or generate you a ton of value, which is cool to see. And then let's just go down the generic categories we got here, right? So we went over the main artifacts we have, why we have them. And then second to our main win con, which we're trying to do, we have some backup win cons, which, can catch opponents off guards. So Sakashima's Will, right, for 4. And we have a commander, we can do both. So you either gain control, target opponent chooses a creature they control, you gain control of it, nice. And then choose a creature you control. Each other creature you control becomes a copy of that creature until end of turn. So we can grab like a high value target that an opponent has and have our creatures turn into that. So that's pretty neat. Or one of our creatures we're going to tutor for. Now we can't leave it on top with Deceiver form. We cast it instead, and then turn all our goblins that we created into that creature till end of turn. So nice one shot there that can be a ton of value, maybe win the game. And a new card that came out in Nano Gene Conversion in Doctor Who set, which I'm thankful for. But choose a target creature you control. Each other creature becomes a copy of that creature until end of turn, except it isn't legendary. So that can even be your commander if you want to get a ton of value. We imagine having a ton of Flying Ward 3 Ovikas out, or again, if we get the mana to cast that Betrays, which we likely will, have all our hasty goblins turn into it, right? So very, very powerful here. Good to have backup win cons and not have all your eggs in one basket. A battle that came out creates tokens. That's kind of neat with trample, but then it flips over into some other value. 9 creature spells you have, Convoke. So very important here. Beginning of your end step, untap up to 4 target creatures. Now our goblins we're creating, we can tap them for mana of that creature's color, which, they're red. Phyrexian goblins, I think. Yes. Help cast other spells. So again, this is kind of part of the ramp package. It just takes a little bit to get there. So a lot of value on this card. Then we have brainstorm effects, just 2. Probably could add more, but basically we're stuck with one of the cards in our hand that we want on top of our deck. Brainstorm and Jace the Mind Sculptor do similar things for our deck. Jace has more options, right? You can tuck something, you can return a creature, so a lot of options. But this +0, draw 3 cards, put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order. So a way to put, that Borderland Behemoth, if it's stuck in our hand, back on top for what we need. So cool to see there. We have a small removal package, something I'm going to take a look further into, but just general counter spells, Chaos Form, Blast of Sack, that kind of thing. Moving right along. So, we have all this Furious Mana. What are we going to do with it? So besides tutoring and all, but that's good stuff. Usually the game plan of the deck is you want to just be drawing cards. We have shuffle effects, we have wheel effects, we have both shuffle and wheel effects. So just for a general draw, we have Frantic Search. Churn through the cards we need, kind of is free. Faith is Looting is repeatable, drawing and discarding cards, so it allows us to churn through the cards we really need, because we have lots of options. We don't mind discarding some stuff, because we don't need every card in this deck. Cataxian Probe is free cycle. You can look at someone's hand, see what interaction they have, and then draw a card. So, just some small card draw here, because most of our card draw comes from the big wheel effects, which we have like 10 of in the deck. They all, are a little bit different in how they act. So Wheel of Fortune is this is one of the more expensive cards, right? Just in general, because it's on the reserve list, yada yada. But basically, pay 3. Each player discards their hand, draw 7 cards. So you really want to be drawing a fresh grip almost every turn, in a way, right? Gets around, our game plan to put something on top until we get that, combo in line. We're just gonna be searching through our deck. Um, so wheels does do this really well. Tolarian wins. 2 mana, discard your hand, draw that many cards. So, even a cheaper wheel. On top of it all, we can get rid of all the cards we don't need if we have excess lands or stuff like that. Imposing Grandeur, nice card that came out in Crimson Vow for 5, right? Each player may discard their hand and draw cards equal to the greatest mana of commanders they own on the battlefield or in the command zone. So, I love cards like this that really play off the fact that your commander is expensive. And I'm going to jump ship right here real quick. But yeah, our commander costs 7, so it's a true wheel for us. So, and maybe someone else is running like a 2-drop. And maybe you can only potentially draw 2 cards. So, really, really, really strong in the deck. And on that, mana value matters. Let's take a look at these 2 set of cards, which I really like. Visions and Duplimancy, right? 3 mana, exchange control of 2 target creatures you don't control. Alright, let's get rid of our little goblins and get something good. But that also has flashback, so use again. So it's going to cost 3 mana again, right? Because this spell costs X less to cast, where X is the greatest mana of, commanders you own on the battlefield or in the command zone, right? Since it's 7, reduces it by 7, and yeah, do this again. So nice little added value to the deck, which I like to see. And then Visions of Ruins, right? Again, cost 4. Each opponent sacrifices an artifact. For each artifact sacrifice way, you create a treasure, so it kind of pays for itself while removing artifacts. And again, it's going to cast even less next time, right? Do it again, because that's flashback. So love these cards. And flashback is like pseudo important in the deck because it kind of gets rid of our deck size, since we will be churning through a lot of cards and shuffling and doing it again. So kind of cool, kind of cool. Like to see these additions in the deck. But back to the wheel, we left off. Yeah, Windfall, 3 mana. Each player discards their hand, draw cards equal to the greatest number of cards a player discarded this way. So someone has a, sitting on their nice thought vessel or reliquary tower with like 20 cards, right? Wheel it away. How about you get 20 cards? Really cool. Wheel of Misfortune. You can wrap your head around this card, but basically each player bids life secretly. Reveals that whoever has the highest bidder takes the damage, but also wheels their hand. So something along those lines. So, again, a wheel effect. This one's a freebie. Turns into a land. Draw that many cards +1. Time Spiral. This one gets exiled, so it gets removed from the game, but each player shuffles his or graveyard into her in the library, draw 7 cards, and you tap up the 6th land, so kind of free in a way, right? Especially we have Mana Flare out. Now we're netting a lot of mana. Time Twister, repeatable, shuffle graveyard, and library in the hand. Commit to Memory doubles as a removal spell, because we can tuck something second from the top, and in the aftermath for 6 is wheel our hand. Echo Eons, you can wheel up front, and if we're stuck with nothing, flashback's nice, get to do it again. And yeah, that's why we have so many of these wheel effects, because they generate value by us casting our spells. We can get into more ritual spells to, generate more mana for the turn, and so on and so forth. And then Underworld Breach is thrown in here. It's not for any really true infinite combos of sorts, but it can generate a ton of value in what we need. We can either get mana by exiling cards because they have escape. So we exile 3 cards, pay for their cost, and then it's a one-shot, get sacrificed, right? So we're using this for the turn to either generate tons of value, wheel again, so forth. So that is like the general game plan. And I missed a spot here, but this is through in here because I think that's pretty prevalent, right? It's an instant speed, damage can't be prevented this turn, it has flashback. So if someone is funny enough to say, hey, let me eat the Fairy's Protection or cast Fog Effects, nice way to get around it. because it's instant speed. You know, they say I'm gonna take all the damage from the creatures, right? And then they flash out a fog. Then you could play this, right? And double gotcha, right? Damage can't be prevented this turn, and has flashback. So if we wheel it away, we can do it. It's a nice little backup. Love to see that card. I think it's neat tech. Throw in there. Moving right along, we have our Bolt Ben. Yeah, we have a creature of 4 greater power, which is our commander. And we can change, you know, they try to path exile our commander, right? We can change it onto one of their stuff. So, yeah, big game plan is protecting this guy. Ward 3 is nice built in, but, you know, people, and pay through life, sure. So, nice ward effect here. However, people will definitely still try to go after it. So, just bear in mind when you cast your commander that you're not, you know, look for people's mana bases. Are they tapped out? Yada yada when you go for your stuff. 30 lands, so definitely a bit lower. Because the general rule of this deck is I want to get to 3 mana in particular for a wheel effect, and then draw into new lands. So we have, you know, your typical stuff. What of note is some fixing here, and Cavern of Souls. If we can get around the counter clause of a commander, more important. We name Phyrexian Nightmare, so really important. And again, another sub-theme of the deck is we can polymorph into stuff. So I threw 2 of these in here. So let's take a look at Synthetic Destiny. Exile all creatures you control. At the beginning of next end step, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal that many creature cards. But all creature cards reveal this way in the battlefield. Then shuffle the rest. Reveal these cards. Revealed cards into your library, right? So, you know, we have like 10 creatures in someone's end step. We can, you know, this is enough way to generate enough value sometimes, right? We can Synthetic Destiny into, you know, we can remove, we exile 10, you know, goblin creatures of ours, right? And just take a look at the creature category. We have 20. So we can grab half the creatures out of our deck pretty easily with this on someone's end step. If we hit like it that betrays or even a stolen or kill the artist, it's going to generate a lot of value, or any tutors, right? Then we can put something on top for sure. So nice fit, I think. And in Chaos Mutation is pretty fun. Exile any number of target creatures controlled by different players, so you can remove other players' high value targets on someone's end step or something. A combat trick. Also, your goblins, right? Turn all your goblins into good creatures, right? For each creature exiled this way, its controller reveals top cards of your library until you reveal a creature card, put it in the battlefield, then put the rest in the bottom of their library in a random order. So similar to Synthetic Destiny, but more options where you can also choose your opponents. It's pretty fun. Fun card. Um, yeah, that's the general game plan in the deck. I have some sideboard options here if you want to take a look at, or some things I was maybe considering putting in, and so forth. So, has 106 cards in there. So I have to trim down a little bit, but you know, you take that as you will, do what you want, yada yada. But yeah, this has been Ovika Enigma Goliath. Um, yeah, I'm very excited about this deck. Can't wait to get it in paper format, because it seems like it's gonna have some fun, interesting games that can take place with it. Um, yeah, so that's the end of the deck tech. I just want to take a quick run through a play test to show you guys an example. If you're curious, you can stick around. If not, thanks for hanging out with Momo versus MTG. So let's boot up a hand, right? I do like Architect's kind of deck layout here. So let us let's shrink this to size. That's what she said, I think. And yeah, this is a hand, right? So let's take a look. So even this first opening hand, we think, can we keep this? 2 questions: can we cast our stuff, and do we have any wheel effects? No. So let's shift this hand. Take our free mulligan. Bam. No mana, no big problem. Mulligan again. Bam. What kind of mana do we have? Cool. So we have a breach, we have mana flare, mana geyser, and a tutor. Let's take another mulligan. This seems fine enough. What are we working with? Wheel effect, chaotic, cool. I think we can keep this hand and then ship Tectonic Giant, which we don't mind, and reverberation back to the bottom. Cool. Commander, we draw first card, play a land. Cool. Next turn, draw a card. Cavern Souls, we're going to name Goblin. Very neat. And now is our first option to think, hey, do we wheel our hand away? And I think the answer is yes. So let's tap for 2, play this card, goes in the graveyard, and we get to draw 4. So bam, ship our hand, and then draw 1, 2, 3, 4. Cool, untap for our next turn, and draw for turn. Nice. We hit a land drop, which is pretty important. So we're going to play this tapped, because we play it tapped as a land. And sure, why not? Why don't we cast the 7 dwarves for fun? Why not? Why not? Because we're going to be wheeling anyways. Next turn, draw. It would be really nice to be able to play this Ruby Medallion, but I think we're pressed for time, so let's wheel our hand away. So this one shuffles our graveyard into our library, and then we draw 7. Shuffle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That might have been the same card. Top of library. Oh, Control S to shuffle. Control X. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Nice. Fresh grip. We get a land drop. Most important. Bam. Cool. Untap. Next turn. Draw. Didn't hit a land drop, but now we can start counting mana. And what can we do with that mana? So we tap 2 here to get 3. 3 here to get 5, 6, 7. That is commander mana. So we could just windmill slam our commander this turn, which doesn't seem bad, because next turn we start going off. Commander out. Check cards in hand, all that good stuff to see whether or not they're remove it or not. So bam. Commander's out. Very cool. We have a dwarf. Funny. So you get to untap, and for our next turn, draw a card. We get a land here. And now is the point where we could probably start going off. So we could just start by potentially wheeling again, right? We have 5. Let's go with 5. So put our hand to the graveyard. And this is where we'll start creating goblins. Since we cast a 3 mana spell, we can create 3 goblins. This is how I'll mark it. And draw 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Neat. Neat. So we have some channel abilities, all that good stuff. That should be in the graveyard. Untap, take the next turn. We can drop down an island, and now we're at the point where we can hold up either a wheel, which wouldn't be bad because it gives a fresh grip, and 5 goblins, or hold up like a chaotic mutation. I think I would throw down the imposing grandeur. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Imposing grandeur. Ship her hand. To the graveyard. And then draw 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Drop an island. Comes in untap because we control 3 or more other islands, including this. Other islands? Maybe not. So, next turn. Bam, untap, draw. Meanwhile, we played that, so now we have a ton of goblins. We got 5 more. Then we can play a land here. So cool. I think with the lineup we can go here, which would be a little convoluted. I'm not the best Izzet player, but like tap 2, Desperate Ritual, hold priority, tap 2 more, reverberate, copying Desperate Ritual. So now we have 6 mana up here, and then tap 1, 2. Oh, we need a red. It would have been really cool to do it. We could spend because it would have to resolve first for either of these. But it's a bit harder of a line to go down. So maybe we just Conduit of Ruins. Put Deceiver form. But I think we need to just wheel, right? Desperate Jet. Red. There's too much red. But we can at least desperate, right? At least desperate for 2, for 3. So we have 3 mana here, pays for the wheel, let's wheel. And again, we're creating all of these goblins, and meanwhile, bam. Move my hand to the graveyard. Draw. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Very cool. And now we have options, right? This is where your hand goes off. So we tap, play the ritual. With 14 goblins, we have 14 red mana, and now we can go down the lines and potentially win from here with the hasty, all these hasty goblins. Because I'll tell you what we have in play is we have Mystics and Mastery, so we can overload it now, still have mana left over. Copy all these spells, get tons of mana, storm off, draw a ton of cards, and whatever we wheel away, we can cast, and that will lead to a win. So this is probably a bit slower of a hand, and gonna have some clunky turns for sure, some funky turns, but I think we get there with this hand. So that's just a quick run through of the deck in a playtest. Not the best showing, but can show how to navigate in a tougher spot, and definitely not one of the easier decks to navigate at times. So take that with a grain of salt. But that's Ovika, right? So if you like this video, please, like it down below. Leave a comment if there's something you want to see next, or if you have a deck of your own you want me to take a look at. And without further ado, thanks for hanging out with Momo versus MTG. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.